welcome to the Mama Rose Show with your host, Mama Rose. We're so excited to be here today, and we have a fabulous guest with us, David Dean Bottrell. How are you, David?
I'm okay. How are you?
Oh, surviving as best as one can in these days of, quarantine. As we're in quarantine, I'm just getting an idea of everybody's life and what your daily routine has become, because I know that you're very active, in acting and cabaret and so many other things. But now that you're inside, what has your daily routine become?
I teach, which I'm very grateful for, and I have a teaching gig with the conservatory, which has now moved to Zoom. So every day, every weekday, I'm on Zoom attempting to teach acting via Zoom, which is very challenging, but the students have been unbelievably game. And I'm grateful for that every day, that I have a whole set of faces that I get to talk to every day. And the biggest thing I think that's happened is, as I think has happened to a lot of us, is losing a sense of time. Like what time is it? What day is it? And I think I've gotten into a bad habit of staying up kind of late, and then sleeping sort of late the next day whenever I can, depending on my classes. And but I've tried to stay engaged. I'm doing some writing right now, so I'm trying to do that, and I'm trying to stay on some kind of a schedule and trying to keep my apartment from utterly going to hell, uh, because since I'm the only one here. Who's to know if I pick up that clothing off the floor, or who's to know if I wash those dishes or not? So I'm trying to sort of I'm trying to remain a grown-up while in isolation, and try to make it as productive as I can, and also staying in touch with people. I'm really making that a priority, because it seems to be very important right now, not only for me, but for other people as well, that we all sort of stay in touch with each other. So that makes it doubly nice to be talking to you today.
Well, thank you, and thank you for making time in your busy schedule to speak with us and get to know you further. I mean, I've been a huge fan for a long time. Maybe some of the viewers don't know quite as much as I might, or another person might, but who is the David Dean Bottrell?
That's a deep question. I could go deep with that, but to keep it nice and light, I'm an actor. I started out here in New York. As a stage actor, and had a nice run at that. And then I moved west to become a writer, and was in Los Angeles, and I started out as a screenwriter there and wrote some movies in Los Angeles, and had a career doing that. And then quite out of the blue, got a phone call asking me if I'd be interested in doing some acting again, and wound up on Boston Legal, which is a show that a lot of people remember me from. And then came back to writing in an interesting way, and came to teaching, which I had never really done before, and out of which came a couple of things like the one-person show. And I also wrote a book last year that Random House published, and it's interesting. It's nice to be back home in New York, still doing all those things that I have been doing, but I guess I'm one of those hyphenate people. I do a few different things.
All that you've done, I mean, your career is vast. I can certainly say that.
Well, thank you.
But what is your greatest accomplishment so far in your career? I know that's a tough question.
Yeah, that's I'd say on the one hand, it would be the first thing that pops to mind is Boston Legal, because that was just such a popular role on that show. And but I would also say that probably the biggest one was the book that I wrote last year, because I had been thinking about that book for a long time. And for those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, I wrote a book called Working Actor, and it's about how to be a middle-class artist. I don't have to tell anybody how to be a star, because I don't think anybody knows the answer to that, but I do know something about deciding you're going to make a living as an artist, and the things that have to happen to do that, and also to be happy doing that. That's probably the biggest message I wanted to send to people who read the book, was don't compare yourself to other people. It's your career and it's your life, but there are ways to be active and engaged and happy, and make changes as you go along as an artist. And you can have really kind of a swell career. And as long as you don't measure it against other people, there's a chance to be sort of deliriously happy in this life. And so anyway, I think that's probably the thing I'm most proud of, because I really am so moved by the responses that I've gotten from artists, young artists and even mid-career artists who've written to me to say how much it meant to them to have somebody cheering for them and somebody speaking from the battlefield as opposed to from the mountaintop.
I totally agree with everything that you just said, and it's a great book. And in the link, we will have the link to the book. And is there anywhere else other than the website that we'll provide that the viewers could purchase your book?
Yeah, I mean, if there were any stores open right now, which at the moment they're really not, but it's in pretty much every big bookstore like Barnes and Noble and smaller bookstores. It's published by Random House. It's also available on Amazon. You could get it today from Amazon. I think you could even download it. It's available as an audiobook. If you look up Working Actor in my name or Working Actor book in my name, you'll find it. It's very easy to get. It's everywhere.
Oh, perfect. Just want to make sure that everybody has an opportunity to purchase it because it's, a very important book to read for actors.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks a lot. I'm really proud of it. I really am. It's funny too. That's the other part about it is I included, like, every chapter opens with a story that either I lived through or that I witnessed about whatever the topic is that we're talking about in that chapter. So I tried to make it as personal as possible because when you make things personal, oddly, they become more universal. And it's been great. I've really been thrilled with what's happened with it. So it's been cool.
But what future plans do you have ahead of you for anything? There's so many things that you do.
Well, I think all of us have kind of an imaginary schedule of things we'd like to do when we get out of here. There's a couple of things that I'm working on. One of them is I'm actually this weekend trying to sit down and follow up on a whole bunch of emails and leads on trying to get future bookings for the show, which you so kindly mentioned earlier. I do this one-man show called David Dean Bottrell Makes Love, a one-man show. And it is all true love stories out of my life. Of course, you know this. I'm telling this for your viewers. And it's a pretty funny show. And it's also a little poignant at times. And it's been very, very popular. And just before all of this happened, I took the show to Los Angeles. You saw it here in New York. And then I went to LA for a week to do some shows there. And it went amazingly well. It was obviously before theaters were closed down. And we were packed. It was sold out every night. And there was a waiting list. It was amazing. And as a result of that, I got a few people asking me about writing some TV pitches. So I'm going to follow up on that, actually. That's already happening. And then I'd like to try to get the show back up on its feet, either here in New York or in Los Angeles ASAP, because that's a really remarkable experience that I've had. I've never had an experience like this. I've never wanted to do a one-person show before. I was terrified of it at first, and now I am so grateful for it. Because again, the responses that I get from people who see it have been really something. And this is the other thing that happened. I can't believe I was about to leave this out. Was Random House Audio came to the one-man show and bought it, and we recorded it live down at Dixon Place, and it is now an audiobook. So that's also, as long as you're online and you're buying my book, feel free to buy my audiobook of my one-man show, because it's fun. It's really funny and poignant, and there's a lot of extra stories on the audiobook that are not in the show. But so that I'm sort of back out on that trail. And like every other performing artist there is, I'm looking for work, even now. And I'm doing self-tapes right now for shows that who knows when they'll actually be shot. But I appreciate the fact that there's something. Everybody's waiting. We're waiting and waiting for the cloud to lift so we can all go back to what we used to do.
So you mentioned your audiobook, which is, I'm assuming, available also on Amazon and Barnes and Noble and all of that. And, Brian and I did attend the performance. It's fun, it's energy, it's, all the good things. You will not be disappointed.
Thank you. And it's short. That's one of the big selling points. It's short. It's like about 75 minutes long, and that was I'd done some storytelling in the past before the show, but just like a story, in storytelling shows. And I did one time about my ex, which used to be in the show but is not out in the show anymore. But when I did it, I just noticed it got a big response, like a big response from the audience, bigger than I'd ever had. And when I drove away from that show, I thought to myself, this was out in California, I thought to myself, I wonder if I've got more love stories in me. I wonder if I've got enough for an entire show. And then I called up Comedy Central Stage out there, which does developmental work for shows and all that. And I said, I've got this idea. And they said, well, I've got an opening in 3 weeks. Do you want to do it? And I was like, okay. And so I literally wrote the first version of it in 3 weeks, and it has evolved since, obviously. But I'm so happy, and I'm so happy with the response that it gets from people. They, when I come out after the show, quite often there are people waiting to talk to me that I don't know, and they're not friends of mine. They're just people who came to the show, and they want to talk to me. They're not standing around waiting for an autograph or waiting to, tell me how funny I was. They actually want to tell me something about their life, like a story out of their life. And I find that really moving, and I find it really, love is a really big subject in our lives. And we make a lot of decisions and turn a lot of corners and make a lot of changes in our lives based on, the pursuit of love or what's happening with love or the loss of love and all that. So it's a big, very universal subject. And I'm so proud that the audience has this really diverse, audience. I mean, it's not just like, I was afraid, oh, everybody's going to look at this and go, oh, well, I won't. I mean, it's just, if that's a gay show, it's come on a gay show. And that's not what's happened at all. I mean, people have really sort of seen the universality in it. And I'm just really proud of it. I mean, I really am. And I'm really anxious to get back to work again on that and start doing shows somewhere. And hopefully maybe this summer, I was trying to find some bookings this summer for the show. So I'm going to keep working on that, but I'm definitely going to get it back one way or the other. But I'm sure proud of it. It's probably one of the most unique things I've ever done as an artist is that show. And it just came out of the blue, as most good ideas do. It just fell from the sky one day.
It was sold out when we were there, and the audience was just all over the place. They were just so excited about the show, even before it started, and then afterwards, hearing everybody talk about it. I mean, it was so wonderful to see, and everybody laughed, and everybody cried. Everything, all the good feelings were there.
I when I lived in Los Angeles, which I did for a long time, I was there for about 20 years. Funny, it like happened as it happens in Los Angeles. I went out for a 3-month job and then stayed for 20 plus years. And there's in the book, I interviewed a lot of actors, and I got a lot of quotes. And I quoted everybody anonymously because I wanted them to speak freely. And one of the actors said, made a quote about Los Angeles, and he said, the thing about LA is you fly out there, you get in the pool, you get out, and you're 50. And I thought, I know just what that means. I know exactly what that means. But when I was out there, I was doing a very different kind of writing because I was writing for movies. And I had this whole chapter in my life where I was primarily a screenwriter working for studios out there. And that's a particular kind of writing. And I was successful at it. I'm grateful for that. But it's very different to write for an audience. Which is one of the things that brought me back to New York, actually, was the desire to be in front of audiences again. Not that I actually love working on TV. I've been very blessed to work on TV a lot and work with a lot of remarkable people. But it is very, very amazing to get out there in front of an audience every night and not know, especially with a show like mine, because mine is it's not a traditional play. I don't have another actor to work with, and we're not telling a specific story. I'm kind of leading people through all these stories, and it's different every time I do it. And that's as wonderful as it is terrifying. But wow, talk about feeling alive, talk about feeling present and fully in your life as a human being. When you step out on that stage and you don't know what's happening tonight, it's pretty cool. It's a pretty cool thing. And I'm grateful for it. And happy to be back in New York and seeing all my old friends and making new ones like you guys.
So you mentioned writing for television and film and all of that. What are some of the projects that you have written for?
I worked in the movie business, and it was, the movie business has evolved quite a bit since I was active in it. But in all the scripts that I wrote for movies, only one was ever made. which was a movie called Kingdom Come that Fox Searchlight made, and it was successful. It made money, and so consequently, because we made money, I continued to work. And working as a screenwriter in Los Angeles it was actually, just to backtrack a little bit. It had come, as all things do. It came from this strange, turn of events, because when I was a young man, I looked sort of supernaturally young. Like I looked like I was 16 or so until I was probably almost 30. I was just a very, very young looking guy in those days. And so I worked a lot because of that. And then suddenly around that age, like around 30, I just changed and I didn't look 17 anymore. And I had no jobs. Like I was suddenly unemployed as an actor, as a stage actor. And I sat down and wrote a play. As I was working with Bonnie at the time, I was being a waiter again, and I would come home after these shifts and I would start writing this play. And the play, luckily, I had beginner's luck with, and it got produced by Second Stage, first at the Long Wharf and then at Second Stage. And then once I got to Hollywood, it eventually became the basis for this movie. And it was a play about my family, but the movie was made, as things happen in Hollywood, with an all African-American cast. So for a number of years, I worked in African-American entertainment, and I wrote screenplays for, in some cases, some really big actors. In other cases, they were not specifically, star oriented, but I worked in that field for a long time, and which is hilarious considering who I am, uh, but it was a really interesting adventure, and I made a lot of really good friends, and I learned a lot in that process. But a lot of those projects, as happens, at least in those days in Hollywood, they got shelved for one reason or another, usually political reasons, or the parties that would have made that project go got another gig and they dropped that. The movie business is pretty nutty. And just around the time that I was getting kind of burnt out on that, the phone rang, and it was a casting director who remembered me from many, many centuries before. She'd seen me in a play back here, and asked me to come in and read for this strange little one episode role on Boston Legal of this very sort of eccentric guy. And I went in and read for it, and the creator of the show, David Kelly, thought I was really funny. And then he created this whole arc for that character that was just astounding. And I've never, ever had that experience of having somebody write for me, write to my strengths, as David is brilliant at doing. And which he does for every actor, by the way, on his shows. He really has an incredible ability to just kind of tune in and write to what you do well, and really makes you shine. And it was phenomenal what happened. And I suddenly found myself in the Andy Warhol school of things, 15 minutes of fame. Like for 15 minutes, I was kind of famous because of that TV show. But my arc sort of ran the season of season 3. But I played this crazy kind of psychopath who was also funny and scary, and ultimately very sad, very poignant. So it was amazing. It was an amazing experience, and that handed my acting career back to me on a silver platter. And then and it was great because I was getting a little burnout on writing, and a new door opened and I went through it, which, by the way, I think is the secret to success in Hollywood is if any door opens, go through it. Even if it wasn't what you planned, just do it. Just go do it.
The question that I have, and it's a big one, is who is the greatest inspiration in your life or in your career?
I would probably say, actually, not a fellow artist, but a teacher that I had a long time ago. His name, he just passed away actually about maybe 2 years ago. His name is William Esper, who is a very kind of iconic acting teacher. And I studied with him a long, long time ago, and along with a bunch of other people, some of whom have become quite famous. But he was so good at, the best way of putting it, he didn't just teach acting. He actually taught you that this was a very special and important art form. That it wasn't really just about you as some, trying to be famous, or it wasn't really all about your ego. That the art form itself was important, that it mattered, and that you were out there in some way, obviously with a lot of assistance from writers and directors and producers, but you were out there kind of teaching people how to get through things in life, how to get through a loss, how to how to celebrate a victory, how to decide what's important, how to sort of choose a path, and when to stand up, when it's when to stand your ground and really be brave. And that actors sort of, by doing their work truthfully, people see themselves when they're watching you. They see their own lives up there, and they gain courage. And I thought that was so beautiful. And I still think about that to this day. That it isn't just about, oh, where's my next gig, and um, it's really something. And I've experienced it too when people have come to see things, or when people wrote me letters when I was on TV, or people come to the show and all that. It's important, especially right now during this lockdown. The work of artists, we're playing a big part in keeping people sane right now, you know. And I guess I would say that he did. He's the one who sort of instilled that in me. That gave me kind of a vision for what my life could be if I really did this. And so I always try to kind of honor that. I'm going to tell you a really quick story, okay? And then I'm probably over time by now, so I apologize for like talking too much. But I did a play with Kathy Bates, not a play, I'm sorry, I did a TV show with Kathy Bates a few years ago. And I had 4 scenes with her, just the 2 of us. And we were playing adversaries in these scenes. And so it was great fun. It was really fun. And she was, she's phenomenal to work with. And she was so gracious. And she said, "You're from New York, aren't you?" I said, "Well, yeah." She goes, "Who did you study acting with?" And I said, "Bill Esper." And she goes, "Me too. I studied with him too." So we started talking about that. And then we had this one scene, which was really tough to do because it was, as happens in TV, the script gets as far as it goes, and then it's got to be shot. And sometimes it's a little lumpy. Like sometimes some of the stuff isn't exactly been worked out, and the actors are sort of forced with trying to justify why we're saying these things. So we did a take of it, and I looked over at Kathy, and Kathy was like, and we getting ready for the next take, and she leaned in and whispered to me, "Let's do this one for Bill." And I said, let's do that. And we really just sort of zoomed in on each other and really listened to each other, and it was so much better. And so I guess the great thing about that is when you really kind of go out there and you offer what you have, is the way that he did, it sticks with people. It stays with them, and they carry it out into their lives. In a sense, it's your immortality, and you pass it. And I'm trying to pass that same thing along to my students. And so hopefully the spirit of the importance of what we do will live on. I hope so.
Before we have to say goodbye, I would ask, and I'm sure that you do this quite often with your students, but there are so many people out there that are, continuing or beginning their careers. What advice would you personally have for those that are, beginning or furthering their career?
I do have a piece of advice, which I think never really fails, which comes back to saying yes to things that are in front of you. And when you are beginning your career, the best thing you can do is everything. Everything that comes your way, anything you can be in or be in a reading of or assist on. If some friend of yours is making a short film and they need somebody to be on the crew, like anything that is happening that you have access to, do it. Not because it's necessarily going to be the big career changer, but at the beginning of your career, you are building this network of people that you know. And when I was starting out, I was in a lot of garbage. I was in a lot of crap at the beginning. But I would always look across and I would see like there'd be like one other actor in this that I thought, wow, that person's good. They're really good. And I would go over and I would say, hey, hi, let's be friends. And I and I began to like build this community of people that were like-minded. We had the same taste, we had the same desires and all that. And we all kind of helped each other out, sharing information and talking about projects and creating projects together. And you slowly start to build something that has little to do with agents and managers, which is the ability to create, the ability to make stuff, and to be in community with those people. And I think that is really essential. Everybody's always, panicked about like, oh, when's that agent going to pick me up? And I'm here to tell you that they'll arrive, they will show up. But and yes, you need to kind of keep in touch with them. But what's really most important is to make things, Go out and make things. And if you're not good at making things, make friends with people who are good at making things and be in their things. But be supportive, build that community, because my God, the people who have gotten me jobs, I shouldn't say got me, but created opportunities for me. And I've been able to do that for them. Some of those people I've known for 30 years. So I would say, go out and do what you can do and make friends with other people who seem like they're like you. And before you know it, you'll be in the business. You'll just be in it.
That's wonderful advice, and thank you so much for sharing that with us. But we do have to say goodbye for this episode of the Mama Rose Show. But we thank you so much, David, for joining us here for the afternoon.
Thank you. I really appreciate being on. This was really fun.
Until next time, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much, and thank you, David, and onward and upward, and take his advice, because I certainly will put it in my heart and take it with me.